Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems in multiple languages. So, you know, folks, y'all all know Miss Jessica is from Chihuahua and a native Spanish speaker, and Camden doesn't.
No,
And we were
I'm getting there.
just talk. Well, what do you? I have to. I will take the brunt of this because having learned Polish, having tried to pick up bar German, bar Polish, bar. What else did I do? Do I know how to order beer in multiple languages where I can order beer and find out where the bathroom is?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I am a language rock, and I didn't know that was a DNA thing, but I think there's a DNA chain in there that just might be preventing Camden from learning that new language.
I've been blaming it on the fact that German is Germanic like English is. So now I'm going to the Romantic languages, which is just so much harder. So I've been chalking it up to that. I mean, we had a pre-call yesterday. She asked me if I spoke Spanish, hablas español, and I said I'm Bishan because the German still just comes out. So I'm a lost cause. We'll get there eventually.
Well, I vote, and there's three of us here. I vote we do the show in English today, and not Espanol. Dan, you okay with that?
I am. I didn't know you spoke Polish though, and so I got to try out the only Polish phrase I know is "Ja ciebie kocham." Did I say that right?
I don't know that vocab.
My great grandmother told me that meant "I love you" in Polish. So I could be totally butchering it too. Obviously, I learned this when I was like 7. So
I was gonna say your Polish is probably a little bit more get down, they're shooting and those kind of things right there.
Yeah. Well, and I'd also say that Sierra, Camden's sister, when I was learning Polish, she was old enough to remember this. I would tell her "kocham." That's what I learned is "I love you." But the really important phrase, folks, and here's your Polish lesson for the day, is "czas na piwo," time for beer. So
I'll remember that one.
Yeah. That's why I use that one a lot in my throughout my career in my life. So, Dan, man, Dan Huerter joining us, and it is great to have you here today, man. I appreciate the fact that your grandmother taught you a little bit of Polish. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's my first father-son podcast, so I'm excited for it. It should be fun.
There you go. And we are a leading father-son business podcast out of the 5 million plus podcast in the world.
I ain't fact checking that.
Yeah, I was writing some things about blue ocean and red ocean this morning, and that's why I looked up how many podcasts there are. Holy crap. But enough said about us because I can ramble on all day. I'm good at that. But I want to get to some stuff that's interesting. And Dan, one of the things I'm excited about learning from you is call you the comeback kid, because you started a business and you're like, yeah, maybe I'm going to go off over here. And then you went back. What drew you back to that founder, old home week, if you will?
Yeah, good question. So, like you said, when I left the business, it was the hardest decision I had made. It was my first entrepreneurship journey. It was my first business build from the ground up. I put my heart and soul in that thing. And to walk away was one of the hardest decisions. So when I got a call, it was 2.5 years later after I walked away, and was presented the opportunity to come back. Originally, I said no. To be honest with you, I said expletive no, and hung up the phone on him because there was just so much emotion tied up into that decision to walk away, and I had come to terms with that. I'd come to peace with that, and so once it came back around, and then like, hey, will you come back? We want you to be the CEO. But it involves a hostile takeover. You're going in blind. You have no idea what the books look like, what's been happening the last 2.5 years. And I was like, I left for a reason. And so he's no, I'm not doing that. obviously something changed, and what changed was my fiance is a incredibly smart woman, and she's incredibly compassionate, and she knows what makes me tick, and she knows that my North Star is I want to help as many people as possible while I'm here on this earth. And she was like, Dan, you could start your own brand and you could build one all over again and help a lot of people with the products that you create. But think about all the shareholders that are still your friends. Think about all the employees that are still there, that have been there for 2.5 years, that are still your friends. Think about all of them. Think about all those people that, have a tug on your heartstrings. And that was enough to get me to really start considering it. And then I started to think about, man, even if it is challenging, even if it is way worse than I thought, like, how much could I grow through that? How much could I learn, and the complexity of it all? So I eventually called him back up and said, yeah, I'm in. I have a few demands before I come back. I have a few things that I need to make sure are going to happen. And if those things can happen, I'll give it a shot. I'll give it my best try. So we're closing in on that's probably 2 years to the day right now when I received that phone call. And so about 2 weeks from now, it would be 2 years from actually going back in and righting that ship. So it's been a journey.
And Camden, I'm guessing you were probably on in the same place.
Go ahead.
What was the decision process to step away? Because most founders get it's my baby syndrome and won't step away. How'd you go through that decision process?
Yeah, no, I definitely had that. I had that same thought process. For me, it was I was stepping away because of one person, and that one person was the co-founder of the business with me. He had essentially 80% of the business, and I had 20. And so I continued to think that I could change this person. I continued to think that if I couldn't change this person, then our success could at least alleviate it and get rid of the issues. That turned out to be opposite of the of the case. The more successful we got, the worse it got. And so I finally realized, like, this guy was 12, 13 years older than me. And I finally realized that a tiger doesn't change his stripes, right? Especially at that age. And so I understood that I was very young to be a dinosaur in my industry. I got started when the industry got started. And at the time I was 29 when I was deciding to leave, and already being considered as a dinosaur in the industry. I saw the dichotomy, and I saw that if I stayed in the hemp industry and I stayed focused on hemp-based wellness, play it out 30 years and I'm a legend in the space if I do things correctly. And so I understood the value and power of that. And I thought to myself, if I could build this company with this guy in place, throwing, obstacle after obstacle my way, what could I do without it? And so I was so young and naive. I didn't understand what my options were really. And so I had to talk to a lawyer and say, like, hey, if I step down as COO, do I still have my equity? How do I sell my equity? Who do I sell it to? How do I get rid of all of that? Am I going to have a non-compete? And so all of those questions, I knew I wanted out for about 6 months to a year before I actually finally started making moves to see, like, what are my options here? I need to get out of this, because if I stay in, it will be seen as I'm condoning my partner's actions, and I no longer was in any way. And so my reputation and the value I had in the industry became more valuable to me than the path the company was on.
Did that lead you, when you were coming back, to kind of come with a chip on the shoulder, a little bit of like, I'm making sure that's not going to happen again. We're going to keep us going straight this time around. Did you come in like that, or was it a little bit more tactical? Could you talk us through that first, let's say, few months coming back?
I want to say I did it all right. I definitely didn't. I came back overcompensating for the previous leadership. So previous leadership was a bit of a tyrant. My way or the highway. I could run this company without any of you. Get out of the office now if you don't want to bow to me type stuff. And so I went too far the other direction. I went too kind, too understanding, didn't hold firm enough boundaries, made a lot of excuses for people who had been there 3 or 4 years that, probably should have been let go. I had to perform some layoffs. The company wasn't trending in the right direction. And so I hesitated on a lot of moves that I should have made sooner. And I hesitated because of that, because I knew what they had been through as a team, and I wanted to be the opposite of what he was. And so I almost lent myself to going too far, overcompensating, swinging that pendulum too far the other direction. So, knowing what I know now, I would have changed strategy going in, and I would have done it the way you said, with a bit of a chip on my shoulder of like, I know what's best. This is what we're doing and why we're doing it. But I was a little too soft coming in, I think.
How have you found that balance? Because I think that's a really tricky thing as leaders. You kind of naturally wind up on one end of those spectrums, and you can run business, with either leadership style. There's obviously some downsides that we've already talked about, but there is that happy medium in the middle there that people try to work towards. How did you find that and start to make steps that direction?
Yeah, I think I'm still finding it, if I'm being honest. It's a evolving process, but for me, I had this chip on my shoulder about, like, I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan. I'm a huge fan of compassionate leadership and servant leadership and that type of style. And to me, when I was coming up in entrepreneurship, I was so discouraged by the fact that it seemed that the people I was meeting that were most successful were a-holes. They were jerks. They stepped on people to get to where they were. And so the chip I had on my shoulder was I wanted to prove that you didn't have to be that. You could be kind, you could be empathetic, and you could still achieve those same levels of success. And again, I think I went too far that direction. My definition of kind at the time was essentially be a doormat and let people walk all over you. And that's not the same, right? So to me, it was learning to be kind, but also to have firm boundaries and to know what those were and to know what our core values and principles were, and then to stand on those. And so to me, I'm still finding that balance. And another side of that is, when you're going to let go of someone or fire someone, I've always struggled with that. I'm horrible at it. It was a joke back when I was COO that I was like 0 for 5 in firing people. If you cried a little bit and told me you'd change, I'd be like, you're right. I'm going to give you a fourth chance. And part of that was because I had this assumption that me letting them go was going to be horrible for them. That was just a terrible thing. And that's not true. And what I've seen over the years is a lot of times it ends up being amazing for them, and they end up, finding even a more passionate job for them or something that's more fulfilling. And so letting go of that, what I think I know on the other side of that conversation, and being like, I know that this is best for the company, so I trust that this is probably best for them as well. And so now holding on to that, it's helped me, again, I'm still finding that balance, but it's helped me to get a little bit more balance there.
Yeah, and with that attitude, that helps out a lot. And this image popped into my head from when I was a young lieutenant in the Army. I had my company commander, my first company commander, Scott Diaz. He used to keep a McDonald's hat on his desk for soldiers that were, it was a, you see that hat,
Yeah.
Sort of there was a little bit tongue in cheek, but when those young soldiers were screwed up, he'd point to that hat. It was really kind of humorous. I'll always remember that in that attitude. But you're 100% right. If it's not a good fit for the organization, it's probably not a good fit for them. So why not help them find something that's better for them?
I wanted just to add on that. It makes me think back to there's a George Clooney movie. I want to say it's like Up in the Air or something like that. But he's basically he's going around just firing people the whole time. But he has this spiel. And of course, the whole point is that he's a bad guy, just going around firing people. But he has this spiel he gives them where he's like, Dan, I was looking at your resume, and you always wanted to be a chef. Why'd you stop? When did you give up on that dream? I want you to go back and to go do that. And of course, again, he's the bad guy in that movie in a lot of ways. But it's really just, how are you going to take that? How are you going to, what perspective are you going to choose to take? There's a lot of other options out there. And I think your point is great, that if you don't fit with the organization is feeling it. You're probably feeling it too. It's, it's not great to be in a spot where you don't fit very well. It's not a comfortable spot to be.
Yep. Totally agree.
So what, was it entrepreneur or was it, that looks really cool over there, the CBD, the hemp stuff? What got you into it originally?
Well, originally what it was I got invited to a grand opening. I saw this product changing life of an old veteran. He had debilitating PTSD, and he was able to be out at this grand opening and talk to me. And the fact that he was there talking to me was huge. And so I met him and his fiance, and they told me their story. That same night, I met a child with Dravet syndrome who went from having 60 to 70 seizures a day to 6 or 7 a week. And I got to talk to his family and see the impact that made. And those two stories alone were enough to get me kind of started of like, man, there must be something here. This is interesting. I've always had an interest in cannabis. And I was like, okay, this is the hemp side. This is the more friendly side. This is the side I can, talk about to my friends in Kansas, and they'll listen. It's a little bit, easier to absorb than straight up marijuana. So, and especially with these stories. And so I was really interested in the stories, but it wasn't until I really started to dig in and do the research and find out why those stories were happening and why CBD was doing this, that I went all the way in. And that why was the fact that we have an endocannabinoid system. And I hate that they named it that. As soon as I say it, it just, I watch people just stop listening to me as soon as I say that word. And
yes. Ignore that part, folks. Come back
please
to us
come back. But our endocannabinoid system. So I just did some content last night out at the Royals game, and I was asking the same questions to people over and over and over. We were doing like some interview content, and I was like, do you know what your respiratory system is? And they're like, yeah, of course. It's what helps, get oxygen around the body. And I'm like, okay, do you know what your immune system is? And they're like, yeah, of course. It's what helps fight off, disease and viruses. And okay, do you know like how to support your immune system if it's feeling weakened? Do you know how to support your respiratory? And all of the answers are yes. We all have an inherent knowledge of these systems in our body. So when I'm a 25-year-old kid and I'm figuring out an entire system in my body off of YouTube, I'm kind of feeling betrayed. I'm kind of feeling like, where did I go? Like I came up in a good elementary school. I went to a good university, a D1 school, and a great, like, I was just like, how have I made it to 25 and I'm having to find out about an entire system in our body for the first time by myself? And then to find out that we're not even teaching this system to doctors in medical school that are prescribing all these kinds of drugs and things without a full picture of what's going on in our body. Like, to me, that all, like, still to this day, I tell people that and they kind of just nod along. And for me, it was like I need to shout this from the rooftops moment. Like, this was a groundbreaking, like, holy crap, this is huge, guys. Like, we have a whole system in our body. We have this plant that seems to be kind of a lock and key mechanism. We know about 2 of these keys that can put into these locks, but there's 100 other in there. And so it's like, to me, it was like learning about like immune system and vitamins for the first time, and like having the keys to the kingdom for the vitamins. So to me, it was like, this is a huge deal. And I saw it helping so many people. And I have an old mentor that I've talked to quite a few times, and a quote that has always stuck with me that he's always said to me is, Dan, if you find yourself like pointing to something or saying someone should do something about that, you're the someone. And so for me, that was what it came down to, was like, someone should do something. Someone should tell people about this. And so I figured out that I was the someone, so I'll do it. And that's kind of how I got started.
Could you talk a little bit about your like growth and like perception around the possibilities with like hemp and cannabis? Because I think there's this really interesting thing. You talk about getting in like on the early stages of it. That was this is the miracle going to cure everything. There's still not the research going in to figure out all of these different things. We know it's probably not the full-on miracle. We know it'll help with a whole bunch of different things. There's this huge gray area in the middle now. Could you talk a little bit about, just like from the ownership standpoint, from the entrepreneur standpoint, of dealing with that gray area? Because it's difficult to make a plan if you're in the gray area.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, we're still there today. The House Oversight Committee met a couple weeks ago and finally said, hey, FDA, you guys have had 5 years to regulate this. What the heck's going on? And so we're still sitting in that gray area in a big way today. And my knowledge was so primitive at first. My first understanding of even what CBD was like, okay, so there's CBD found in cannabis, there's THC found in cannabis. THC is the thing that people use to get high. CBD is what we hear about, like some of the stories we're hearing, the medicinal side. Like that was how I understood it. The THC was the recreational, CBD was the medical. Now I understand that it's much, much more nuanced than that. And there weren't a ton of studies out there, like you said, which is interesting in its own conversation of, you know, one of the first big moments where I learned about the endocannabinoid system and I learned about the power of CBD was from a government patent. Back in 1999, the government patented CBD, and they said that they believed it to be an antioxidant and a neuroprotectant. There's a long, you can look it up. It's patent 6630507. Google it yourself. It's a crazy patent. It would take you a long time to read through it, but they knew all of this. And what's curious about this is they were talking about CBD taken from a cannabis plant at the same time that they're saying cannabis is a Schedule 1 drug with no medicinal value. Zero. And so I don't know how they can do both and get away with it. And all of us just nod along and say, yeah, that's fine. But that was really frustrating to me when I learned about that too. And so Israel's been doing studies on cannabis for a long time. They were the ones that helped us discover the endocannabinoid system. Raphael Mechoulam was the scientist that isolated THC at first. He's very much known as the godfather of cannabis. There's a fantastic documentary on him called The Scientist you can look up on YouTube. And it talks about all of his studies, all of the things that he was discovering. He gave CBD to like 30 epileptic individual kids, and 100% of them like had their lives improved from it. 100%. Like on a CBD isolate studied it. He put out this paper thinking it was going to change the world and woke up the next day to crickets. Nothing happened, and continued like that for his career. And I think because of the stigma that cannabis has with it, a lot of people don't take it seriously because they used cannabis to find that system is why they called it the endocannabinoid system, right? Like the internal endo, and then cannabinoid is just how they discovered it. So once they isolated THC, they were studying the human body. They noticed all these receptors light up. And so they named it cannaba because they used cannabis to find it. But I also think that's why they're not teaching it in medical school still, where, you know, it still has that stigma to it. And so that's part of the frustration. But the knowledge and understanding continues to grow, and it's really exciting. And that's what I think I love about it is we won't have it all figured out by the time I'm dead.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Evergood Adventure Wines. Our loyal listeners know Evergood's founder, Matthew Hexter, from his appearances on the show that never disappointed, and don't worry, Evergood Adventure Wines doesn't disappoint either. Evergood is a craft winery from Colorado that makes wine from lemons, not grapes. Picture adult lemonades perfect for your next backyard barbecue or hanging out with friends at the beach or the pool. No need to drink a warm red grape wine when it's 100 degrees out or hotter here in Tucson. Evergood over ice is the perfect refreshment for a hot summer day. They come in a variety of flavors, including lemon, strawberry, lime, grapefruit, and watermelon. These non-carbonated wines check all the boxes: gluten-free, vegan, low sugar, and low in sulfites. Best of all, they taste damn good, and they have fun names, like their OG lemon wine called Skier Pea. Yeah, you heard that right. And I'll tell you, Skier Pea is one of my favorites. Evergood ships to 41 states, so you can order your lemon wines online at evergoodadventurewines.com. Plus, Matthew is offering 20% off for our listeners. Just use promo code CAM-OTIS at checkout to get 20% off and start enjoying these amazing lemon wines. Go to evergoodadventurewines.com or click the link in the description below and click Buy Now to redeem your Cam and Otis Show exclusive.
All right. So as I was saying, you know, we're not going to finish in my lifetime figuring out all that there is to learn about the cannabis plant and cannabinoids. And so cannabinoids, THC, CBD, and one that's really exciting is CBG. So some of the early preliminary studies, as we're studying that one, are showing that it has neurogenerative properties. And in simple terms, it means we might be able to help brain cells regrow. And that's exciting to me because in college, I liked to kill those things quite often, and I was told that we might not be able to regrow them. So learning things like that, and then knowing that there's 100 other of these cannabinoids. So there's CBD, THC, CBG, CBC, CBN. There's all these different ones that we have to learn about individually, and then we have to learn about how do they interact with each other. And so you know, it's mind-blowing to think about all the potential applications and all what they can do. You know, CBN is another another one. It's actually the degraded form of THC, and CBN was shown in a study I think a month ago, to perform better than melatonin for getting people to get to sleep and stay asleep and have deeper restful sleep. So it's exciting that like these studies are coming up, and a lot of the times we have, since we were so early and putting out products out there, a lot of times we've been ahead of the science. And what I mean by that is I had a family call me one day crying, happy tears, freaking out. And they're like, Dan, we have a 9-year-old child. They've been nonverbal autistic their whole life. We started giving them your tincture, and 2 weeks later, this child started singing their favorite kid song. Never heard their kid's voice at all. And so, like,
Wow.
you can imagine how impactful was that. So they're freaking out and they're calling me like, did you know it had this like power or capability? Like, and I was like, no, I had no idea. That's incredible. And about a year later, a study came out of Stanford, and they said children with autism spectrum disorder or on the spectrum had a lower amount of endocannabinoids than their peers. And so part of this endocannabinoid system, when I'm talking about CBD, when I'm talking about THC, when I'm talking about these things taken from a plant, those are known as phytocannabinoids. But we actually make our own cannabinoids called endocannabinoids. And so the study showed that children on the spectrum had a lower amount of those than their peers. So then it makes sense. You start to make sense of it, of like, okay, that probably happened because either A, supplementing a phytocannabinoid brought those levels up more to a baseline, or B, using CBD actually slows the degradation of our own endocannabinoids. So it just increased the amount of endocannabinoids in the system. But a lot of times we get these anecdotal stories coming in. I can't talk about them to anybody like in marketing or anything, because that would be seen as a claim and unverified. So I can't say that. But then B, it's like, okay, but I want to learn, like, how did that happen? And so then when the studies come out, it's always a great like full circle moment of like, now that story from a year ago makes way more sense. And now we have the science to prove why that happened. So it's just interesting, being some of the first and kind of pioneering an industry that, like you said, there's gray areas, there's all kind of things, but there's also those upsides, those really fun stories where it comes together and you're like, oh my God, we are making a huge difference. And now the science has proven what we're doing.
Is the research U.S. in America picking up at all? Because I feel like that's one of the, to kind of talk about that they're supposed to regulate all those things. I feel like I heard that they were supposed to pick up a lot of that research, but I haven't heard any of those claims or different things that you're talking about. Has it picked up at all, or is that something that's still like really lagging behind?
Yeah, no, it's picking up, and there's some great companies out there that are trying to lower the barrier to entry for some research like that. Because a lot of that research, the double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized human trials, like it's expensive to do. It's a big lift, and so there's kind of a big barrier to entry to that. So if you can lower that barrier to entry, you can increase the amount of knowledge. And so there's some great companies out there that are doing just that. And it is growing. It's growing. I now see studies coming out at a much higher rate than I did, even just a year ago. So that's exciting as well.
But the other problem that you run into is the whole Schedule 1 thing. Even with CBD, I know there's some limits in where you can market and how you can market. Not just the can't make claims like every business, but other restrictions. How are you handling that? Because, the Cam and Otis show, Tribe and Purpose, we can post stuff on Facebook and Twitter and all day long. And man, you get smacked upside the head, not on the wrist, upside the head if you do stuff like that.
Well, who could drive through Colorado on I-25? Who cleans up every section of the highway there? It's all weed companies, because they don't have anywhere else to put the marketing money. They're like, maybe we'll put a little sign on the side of I-25. That could work. Yeah, because they don't have the options.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's been tough, but it's taught us things that I don't think we would have otherwise learned. So we had a lot of early success using ambassadors, particularly UFC fighters is kind of where our ambassadors started. And we were so terrified of making claims and saying things that we would get smacked upside the head for, that we had other people talk for us. We gave away a ton of our product like that. Our first marketing wasn't some genius plan. It was, how much can we afford to give away? And then we gave away a ton of product because we had confidence in it that if we gave away 170 people would come back with a crazy story about how that helped them or someone close to them. And so that was where it started. We were successful with that. We started to gain some early loyal fans with that. And then we're like, okay, who can we give it away to that has a platform that can talk about what it does for them? And I had a friend who had managed a bunch of fighters. He had his own fight promotion where he sent over 75 athletes into the UFC. And so he was very adept with managing UFC fighters and things like that. And so he introduced me to a couple. And once we gave it to a few that started to see themselves recovering faster from hard workouts and sleeping a little bit better, that's enough. And then you layer in that patent that I told you about of like, hey, CBD also might have neuroprotective properties. So taking this is just kind of an added layer of insurance as you're getting your, face smacked in every night. That's enough for them to start taking it, talking about it. And then it kind of spread like wildfire. And especially back then, UFC fighters were kind of searching for any other way to bring in additional revenue, especially if they're only fighting once a year. It's not the most lucrative career until you get to the upper rung. And so anything else you can do to support your income. So we learned about affiliate marketing, ambassador marketing, being able to give them coupon codes and links that they could share with their followers. We learned all of that only because we were scared of making claims. I would like to tell you we were early and we understood influencer, ambassador, affiliate. But no, it was strictly from a point of, maybe if they say it for us, we won't get in as much trouble.
Could you talk a little bit about the effectiveness that you saw there? Because just like you said, that is a big piece of marketing now. Like the influencer marketing is really successful. Did you see success with that? Or was it something where because you were on the earlier edge of it or because of the type of product it was, it didn't work out the same?
Both. It was definitely both. We were on the earlier edge. It was before ambassadors and influencers, the ones that are truly value, understood how valuable they were. And so if we tried that same approach today, we'd get met with a lot of like, oh, I don't do commission only. You have to pay me at least X amount a month even to talk to me type thing. Back then, they didn't understand it. They didn't understand the value of it. And so it was easier. But still to this day, we always took an approach of you had to actually use the product. You had to actually find value in the product. And that authenticity is so important. And I think it's missed on a lot of people. I think a lot of businesses out there just look at followers, maybe even some of the more savvy ones will look at engagement too and think like that's all you need. If you get somebody with 4 million followers, that's a shortcut to success. It's not true. I've seen 4 million follower influencers do absolutely nothing. And I've seen 15,000 follower influencers run circles around that follower. And it really came down to, did they actually use the product? Did they actually find the value and benefit of it? Because that comes out in the way they talk about it. And I think my generation's really good at like sleuthing out an ad or a real read. And I think the next generation's even better. So you're not getting a lot past that next generation. So it really has to start from a point of authenticity. And that's why we gave away so much product. So if we are interested, we like your content, we'll send you a care pack of some of my favorite products. And then I'll talk to you in 30 to 45 days. There's nothing to talk about. Until then, let's see if you actually use the product, if you actually find value in it, because that does not only on the authenticity side, but when we come back into negotiations, well, now negotiations are way easier, right? The product's bringing them a ton of value in and of itself. So free product is now even more valuable than it was before they knew what it was doing for them and things like that. And so it makes negotiations easier if they're truly finding the value. So we have a really big name comedian influencer, and he started using our product thinking it would help him with his anxiety, and it got rid of his restless leg syndrome, and nothing's ever touched his restless leg syndrome. And so all of a sudden it's super valuable to him. And so we were able to get him on a commission only deal, which he would never do otherwise, because he loves the product so much. And because he wants it coming to his door month in and month out, he's still willing to talk about it on his podcasts and whatnot. So it's comes from that point of authenticity, but then it just builds on that. And there's so much value adds that come on the back end of that. And it's only when you slow down to look back and see that you're like, oh, that's why that's been working. Oh, that's, how that works. So it's been a learning lesson since the beginning for sure.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose. Are you tired of dealing with the cost of bad leadership? It's time to make a change. The Green Beret Leadership Program is your key to unlocking the full potential of your team. By developing leaders in your business, you'll get a proactive and responsible team that embraces challenges, takes calculated risks, and takes action without constant supervision. Developing great leaders can take a lot of time and energy, and that's why businesses tend to opt for the trial by fire and school of hard knocks path to leadership. The truth is that wastes time and money, and it puts a lot of extra stress on your leadership team and the rest of the team. Poor leadership drives away quality talent, and the longer you wait to fix the problem, the more talent you're going to wind up losing. With the Green Beret Leadership Program, you can use the battle-tested leadership principles of the Green Berets to develop great leaders in your team faster with the School of Hard Knocks. You'll see changes in just a few short weeks. The longer you wait to take action, the more damage poor leadership can do to your business. Learn more about the impact GBLP can have on your business and schedule your free coaching call with your Green Beret coach, Otis McGregor, now at findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP, or click the link in the description below. Don't leave your team to struggle on their own. Give them the tools they need to be great.
And there's such a great lesson there. You were forced into it, because of all the regulations by, the easy social media posts, the no cost sort of things like that. What did you do? Because I'm sure you had a handful, hopefully not more, of those people that you said, hey, we'll send you some stuff, and they didn't work out. How did you handle that? Because I agree with you. The authenticity part of it is so critical. How did you maintain the quality of your brand ambassadors? Maybe that's the way to put it.
Oh, that's a great question. I think I'd like to give you a better answer than this, but a lot of it was luck. A lot of that we got lucky with, and I don't know if it was the way that we talk or carry ourselves, attracted, like attracts like type thing, but we got lucky with our kind of first core group of ambassadors. It was an incredible group of people, and at the end of the day, they all had to be people that we want to work with, right, and enjoy working with. So. Oftentimes we do have people repping our product that we don't necessarily condone, right? But we can't stop that. If they buy our product and they talk, I love this product so much, I take it like it is what it is. We might not even have a relationship with them where they're getting paid to say that. They might just have that value. And so all we can control is what we can control. And so we have, an ambassador page on our website where it's, our close relationships, our close ambassadors. You can see, who we have as our roster list. And we try to take a very hands-off approach now. Before we've tried it 10 different ways at this point. And now we want it to feel like a true partnership. And so we have to find people that are very aligned and that we don't have to micromanage, because we don't want that channel to be, we've had it in the past where it was, you have to post 3 times on this platform and 4 times on this platform and 2 times on this and just keeping up with all that is just a bear. And if I'm going to require you to do all that, then you can require a salary out of me. If instead it's a commission only basis because you find so much value in the product, and I can give you some free product every month, now I'm not going to require you to post at all about it. If you don't want to, that's fine. I love who you are as a person. We are already our ambassadors, but the more you post, the more money you make, probably. So you want based off of that. And so it's again been a learning lesson, and I always come back. It's funny that I'll always veer off the path for a while and come back to like this simplest route. Like, what's the simplest way to manage this? And that's.
Yeah, because it can't be this simple. We got to make it hard to make it really.
If only it was way more complex, we'd make way more money, and then you always come back and you're like, "That was dumb."
What was it like shifting when you came back? Shifting from the COO role that you were in just a couple of years before to a CEO role. Can you talk a little bit about that mindset shift?
Yeah. There wasn't much of one. Even when I was in the COO role, I was still managing most of the team. I was still, kind of seen as that leader. And the CEO at the time was more of the outward figurehead. But internally, everyone reported to me. I was kind of already fulfilling that role in a way. And so I did leave, like I said, for about 2.5 years. I went to another company where I was COO too. And so I'm still figuring that one out too. I get down in the weeds a little bit too much. I still feel like a little too hands-on. I meet a lot of people that are like, "You're the most hands-on CEO we've ever met," and I don't think that's a good thing. I think it just comes from a point of, I have always been COO, and I know how to run ops, and I'll just do it myself real quick. And I need to, learn to put more faith and trust in my team, and to delegate more often than I do. I've started to do that recently, and it's been pretty powerful. And so I just need to continue to on that path, because as a COO, especially of a startup, you end up everything's an operation, right? Like everything kind of falls under COO. And so I still have some bad habits that I need to break there, of just doing things myself, working later just to get it done, or whatever. And my team's awesome. They're always asking me like, Dan, what can I take off your plate? How can I help you? And it's just me needing to be like, okay, there is stuff you can take off my plate. I'm not the only one that can do this.
As you're like kind of, the word that comes, or the phrase that comes to mind is like living in both worlds there, a little bit of the COO and the CEO. And you're kind of trying to drift, or not drift towards, but, in that CEO role, trying to start delegating more and more with that. Could you talk a little bit about the decision for that? Because I think a lot of other people in that situation could also go, oh, maybe I should hire another CEO, and I need to go over here because this is where my genius is. This is where I have the most fun, all of those kind of things. How did you decide which direction you want to go on that?
Oh man, I wasn't supposed to be COO at first. When I was asked to be a co-founder of the company, my degree was in information systems. I was working for a $5 billion software company. I was a tech guy in a big way, right? I was a computer nerd. And so I was hired to be CIO, which wasn't a necessary role at all. I didn't know that. And so when I was brought in, there was another COO, there was another CEO, and it became clear that this COO was good at going out and getting lunch for people, but not a lot else. And so I essentially just saw jobs that needed done, and continued to do them until all of a sudden I found out that I was COO, and I'm, now head of operations. And so I never went out on a path to be COO, or learn all the things I did about operations and systems and all of that. Obviously my degree's in information systems, so I think in systems, but it was just what needed to be done. It was the job that needed to be done. And so I thought I could do it best at the time with who was in the company, and I started doing it. And CEO to me is such a weird title. Every other title makes sense. I think Simon Sinek talks about this, like chief operations officer, what they're in charge of. Chief financial officer, what they're in charge of. What does chief executive officer even mean? You're the executive, like
executive. He's executive. That's what
he's an executive. He's just, the buck stops there. And I just think it's such a silly title. And so Simon, he proposed CVO, which is Chief Vision Officer, because that's truly the job, right? Like holding on to the vision, helping everyone in the team see the vision, helping everyone outside the team see the vision, and then putting the necessary people in place to fulfill that vision and to actually bring it to life. And so that's what I really enjoy. That's where I find the most passion, is the alchemy of it all, taking the nothing and forming into, this business or this company or this community. That's just so exciting along the way. And that's something that I think you can fall in love with the process of. And the process sucks most times when you're trying to achieve something great. And for me, the team building and the community building, that's still a fun process, even though it's still pretty hard.
Could you talk a little bit just about, we talked about all the different cannabinoids and the research and those things. Could you just kind of, broadly speaking, I want to do a little bit of future casting. What do you see in the industry in the next 10 years?
Oh, yeah. I see the same thing I've always seen since I got into this industry. And it's weird that it hasn't changed for me. And I love our brand name and our brand build because it's pure spectrum. We offer a pure offering of the spectrum of cannabinoids that we have access to today. And so we don't flavor our tinctures and add a bunch of other things. We give you just what you need and nothing else. And that's the purity side. But what I see is, I hope I don't draw a target on my back here. I've been doing it a lot lately, but I see big pharma becoming plan B in a lot of ways. I see people coming back to nature and looking for a natural route first, and then then looking to big pharma. And I'm not saying that big pharma doesn't serve a purpose, and pharmaceuticals haven't been miraculous for people in certain ways, but especially here in America, the way that we use it for everything, and like that's our first stop, is just like throw a pill at it, throw a pharmaceutical at it. I see that changing. I'm starting to see that tide turning, and to me, there's probably an answer in nature somewhere, and I think cannabis is a big key to that. Obviously, having 100 plus of these molecules, and we're finding out they each do kind of its own thing. To me, we can replace all of the people that are on Adderall with CBG, or we can replace all of these other things that are really prominent in every household with a nature provided solution. So that's at least what I would love to see, and what I predict happening over the next 10 years. But I oftentimes think in my own mind and not in the mind of like most people. And so that's where I if I'm wrong here, it's because I didn't take that into consideration. But I do think that plant-based medicine and nature, and just natural healing modalities, like we're seeing the rise of Wim Hof and breath work and cold plunges and these other things. And so I think we're starting to go backwards in a way, in a good way, right? Like we're looking back to, why were we so much healthier back then? Why did we have less cavities back then? What was going on back then? Like some things we've improved greatly, but other ways we've gone backwards. And so now we're finding that balance of like, maybe a lot of the things that we learned from our ancestors were right. Maybe they did have those things right. We don't have to fix everything. And now we have technology and whatnot where we can measure those changes and figure it out. So I often try to think back to like I view myself as a caveman with technology, basically. Like I look back to caveman times a lot, but now I have technology where I have wearables and stuff, and I can actually measure what things are doing in my body.
Well, you're collecting your own data on how you feel, and it's that old business adage of what gets checked gets
Yep.
done, right? And so if you're able to measure those things and see that progress, I think that's proof of the things that you're testing out. And now, the other piece that I add to that is we have all the information in the world at our fingertips. And as an individual, I can do the research, and dig into it a bit more, as much as I care to, as opposed to, what always flashes in my head is, I mean, you pick up that new prescription and they give you a 10-page document of 8 font front and back of all the things about it. And I ain't reading that shit. You know, quit killing the damn trees, VA. I mean, it's that sort of thing, though. And as I ramble on about how to understand those things, and how to learn those things, man, I was the easy route where I could talk about CBG or CBD and what I learned, which is really cool. And I also guys, before I give you what I learned, it the biggest fault I always go back to with cannabis is this YouTube video that a friend of mine, I think it was our buddy Kim Stuck, Kim also, with Allay Consulting. I always got to give her a shout out. They're great people. But she had me go watch this video on YouTube called what if marijuana cured cancer, if I remember it right. And it was really great understanding and all this sort of stuff, dudes cooking stuff in the backyard and all of that, until it got to the end and it listed all the things that this product is going to cure. And I think that's me personally, got to watch out for the snake oil that's going to, cure my bunion and help me sleep better at the same time. I mean, it's, yeah. So for me, what I learned was find a way. I love the way that you ended up with ambassadors and how you worked with those people. I mean, yeah, there was a little bit of luck, but you create your own luck. We all we believe that very strongly, right? You put yourself in the right situation through preparation, and then you get AKA lucky. That's what the people outside looking in call it.
Yep.
It was hard work, and you figured out a way of overcoming the limitations and the roadblocks that were put on you and your industry in order to grow the business and be successful. So, as a great methodology, and the bigger lesson is that there's always a way if you're willing to work through it and put forth the effort.
I agree.
Camden, how about you? What did you learn?
Yeah, this is something I'm definitely putting in my back pocket. So thank you, Dan. Because when it comes to the coaching we do with Tribe and Purpose, and like talking about purpose, I've been on my soapbox enough on the show talking about how if it's your purpose, you're the person who should go pursue that. Focus on your area of expertise. Focus on your genius. That's how you make an impact. And you said this of saying somebody should do that. Well, that somebody is you. And I love that because the only people who are going to recognize the problems, the people who are probably a little bit better suited to go solve that problem. So that was a really big one for me that I am definitely stealing. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Awesome. I'm glad you found value in that. I almost learned it. I remember it ends in pipo, but I was trying to remember how to say time for beer in Polish. How do I say that? How do I say it again? Chasna piva. Did I say that right?
Chasna piva. It's getting a little rusty.
It's close enough. If you slur it, it's good.
Chasna
piva.
Yeah. If you're in Warsaw and you say that in a bar,
beautiful. Beautiful. And then I'll probably tell them I love you wrong. But I also learned that it's a lot of fun to be on a podcast with a father-son team. So thank you for having me. I had a blast.
Awesome. Dan, how do folks find you? Learn about what Pure Spectrum has, y'all's products, what you got going on.
Yeah, our website is purespectrumcbd.com, and our Instagram handle, which is probably where we're most active on social, is Pure Spectrum Hemp, HEMP. And then me personally, it's a long handle, and so good luck with this. But my personal handle is Daniel Blake Huerter. And you can find me on Instagram there. We did have another handle that was working for about a month called Dan Hemp Man, where it was all the educational content on hemp and the endocannabinoid system. And that got the Instagram ban hammer about a week ago. So we're back to my personal one. And hopefully I don't get banned there as well.
Yeah, well, there's another lesson learned for you folks. Back up your data when you're using a third party's platform to put stuff out. LinkedIn's another great example. I've seen that happen on LinkedIn. So
that's right.
That's what Eric Holtzclaw was saying about marketing stuff of like everything you put out there on a Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, you don't own any of that. Put it all on the blog too, so you can actually own it. So I had to have that back out there. Shouts to Eric.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, hey, Dan, man, it's been great. Really enjoyed hanging out with you today, and we appreciate
thanks again for having me. I did too.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of the Cam and Otis Show, and a special thanks to our guest, Dan Huerter, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at the Cam and Otis Show, and if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to share it with other lifelong learners in your tribe so they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes is available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.